All right, everyone, welcome to this little award ceremony for the AI Governance Ideathon, where we'll announce the winners and talk a bit about the next steps you might take. So for this Ideathon, for this hackathon, it was, of course, the first non-technical one, and we saw a lot of very long submissions and a lot of different topics as well. Very broad range of topics, and it's been extremely interesting, like very fascinating to read them all, and it's been super high quality, and I've been very impressed, and the other judges have also been very impressed. There is one caveat to this, which is that all of the actually several of the judges, if not all, were contacted basically all day the past couple of days because of the Future of Life Institute's open letter. So our judging process had a bit of kinks here and there, but I hope no one feels too misjudged. We have a lot of honorable mentions to make up for that. It's very hard to judge these all these projects fairly. But it's been amazing and really interesting to read them all. I know I have spent a lot of time going through them and giving them as good comments as possible. You'll also notice a lot of very encouraging messages in my reviews for continuing the projects, because I think like so many of them are just an hour or two away from publishing, and many of them can really be developed into something further. Like these are the first steps for you to take on the journey of working with these projects, right? I think there's a lot of potential in all of these, and basically could see them all on something like the EA Forum or on Medium or something like this, or in local op-eds and newspapers and these sorts of things where there's a chance to explain your opinions or explain your sort of perspectives on AI safety and so on. But with that said, let's jump straight into some of the awards. And of course, the first one is the random prize, which is $200, and that goes to, in this case, will AI always undermine democracy? So we can give them a hand. And then it's called the 33rd project prize because 33 was the random number that arose. And I'll just quickly talk about it since it got a prize now. So this was focused on some of the making it more open source, like open government with AI integrated. So that was just very interesting and quite a good analysis of this perspective. And the fourth prize is the pre-mortem AI. Perfect. And this project was basically the reason why we selected this was because it was a very good technical proposal, or very good technical first steps. So the results were a bit on both sides, but it was a very good first steps towards sort of a product that could work as an automated auditing for different projects and so on. So in this case, you can see that how does this project affect, and it came with a prototype as well. How does this project affect 5 different parameters, and basically had an automated process for this. And as I write here as well, I would really love seeing this project put into a sort of open source GitHub repository for automated auditing of project concepts. So it takes in basically a project description and then outputs a bunch of different like risk estimates for different parameters. Perfect. And the third prize is Global Coordination Proposal for AI Safety. Perfect. And this project basically looks at the sort of legislative structure of a global coordination organ for AI safety and for governing AI properly. That goes, super nationally, and then to national states as well, and to the individual AI companies in that too. And while the regulatory part is very well thought out, the technical side is not too complete, but it's a very good proposal nonetheless, and therefore it receives the third prize. So absolutely wonderful. And the second prize goes to the AI governance gaps in developing countries. Pardon me. And this is because this is a really great example of like targeting a neglected issue or a neglected topic within AI governance, which is this, okay, what is actually happening in developing countries, not just in the Western hemisphere or in the Northern hemisphere of things, and what do we expect, for example, Chinese influence to be in African countries, and how do we expect Southeast Asian countries to sort of come up with these digital legislative infrastructures that will determine what the future of their AI usage will be, and this can prevent these sort of misuses as well. And a very detailed and very deep analysis as well. So super good there. And the first prize goes to data taxation. So this project from P. Varfrebo and some others was basically focused on how can we put in a new sort of way to limit AGI growth or AGI development. And one of the main, it's basically meant to tax the compute used and the data used for these sorts of models. And as Elizabeth writes, it's very well written and well researched, and this preemptive risk assessment focus is definitely needed and a key contribution. We also see that Alexios writes that it's a really nice setup as well. And yeah, I think these reviews might actually be for another project, but the project itself is very wonderful. Is anyone saying anything? Haha, Carolina, perfect. Well, and then we come to all of the ones where, it's been really hard to select the top 4, and it's just too bad that all these projects, that we can't have a top 100 or something like that. So in this case, we also have a bunch of honorable mentions that I just want to put in, and there's a lot, and here nearly all the projects could be as well, but these were very good too. One of them was the categorization of risks, where it uses a sort of terminology or a combination of letters and numbers that very easily can put it into a multidimensional framework, what sort of risks arise from AI. The second is a great trends discussion in GPT deployment, and looking at what will GPT-6 look like, what do we expect OpenAI to do, and what have they done before. And one of the things there was super interesting was that it was basically very good at looking at what were some of the actions that OpenAI had done before compared to GPT-4 release. So that's super interesting, and I personally think very good and could be expanded as well. And then one was also an AI safety ranking system, basically like a sort of certification system where you rank companies based on how well they work with AI. There was another proposal that was also looking at, I think it's called the ESG, but for AI, which is like a certification system to measure how well do companies live up to compliance on these different categories of safety. And then another one was this Open Government with AI. That's the 33rd project prize as well, so I won't repeat that. And one was Preventing Artificial Democracy. This one was really well written and went really deep with references and in everything, and a good analysis and a good discussion there as well. And AI impact assessment requirements. This basically takes from the environmental impact assessments that came in the European Union in 85, as far as I remember. And not that I'm that old, but as far as I do remember. And basically try to implement the same for AI. Can we do an impact assessment for artificial intelligence projects, both implemented in private and in the public? And then another one was a list of ideas for safe implementation of AI in democracy. And this was actually like really interesting to see, just like so many different ideas that were sort of looked into quite in depth, and they were relatively unique as well. So that was very interesting to see. And overview on pros and cons for military involvement in AGI development. Of course, usually we see military as these evil dudes who will just create autonomous weapons, but this actually also looks at some of the pros, like security, cybersecurity, and so on, and some of the governance structures that are naturally arising in the military. So that was just interesting to see. I think it still concluded that it was negative, but alas. And then a very awesome proposal on like looking at economics and AI safety. Is very in depth and looked at a framework for measuring how like AGIs will collaborate in a multipolar scenario, and how we can have like AI watchmen, so these third-party AIs that will watch the other AIs in the world. And then there was just this great US-China export overview, and I just thought it was interesting to see all the data and all the different perspectives there on what China is doing right now to mitigate these export controls. And then a great one, Beyond the Binary, Balancing VR Governance and Opt-out Autonomy. I really liked and I think we even got a little chatbot in the town hall channel that came out of this project, and that was just like it was very interesting to have these digital avatars that were discussing the issues with you, so you could have different personalities that actually gave their perspective on the issues, and I thought they were surprisingly valid and like good perspectives and from some artificial avatars. So this is definitely something that can be developed further, and in this case also with like VR possibly. And another one was categories of AI risks. This was just a very good dictionary for policymakers and so on what are some of the risks we see with AI. And another one was what might limit the exponential growth of AI, looking at all of the different reasons there as well. So another compendium to some degree of work. And another one is slowing down AI through memetics, making sure that sort of the popular culture around AI understands both the risks and the dangers and the and that we control the memes that are spread about AI instead of just letting it, for example, go towards an accelerationist agenda or something like this. And another technical project was actually the measuring gender bias, which took quite a good approach to taking in a data set and taking in a model and then just evaluating it relatively black box on just measuring its bias in different situations. And then a very good other proposal was also that GPT-6 needs arc-evals. So arc-evals is this concept of making sure that large models are tested for becoming agentic, or like for doing things that we don't want them to do. So we put them in naturalistic environments, like to hook them up to 1,000 APIs and just see how they react before we actually put it into the world. So in this case, that would be required. So amazing projects, and I think give yourself a hand as well. Like this was amazing work, and even though you didn't come in the top 4, don't feel disarmed by that. So let's give them a hand. Parfait. And of course, thank you very much to our judges, which despite the very busy schedule that suddenly came up during these 3 days, still made time to review a bunch of projects. So Elisabeth Seger and Emma Blumke from Governance Center for the Governance of AI, and Otto Baden from the Existential Risk Observatory, and Alexios from the Eindhoven University of Technology, and David Christofferson from Convergence Analysis. So Oliver Klingefjord from the AI Objectives Institute, he unfortunately couldn't make it either. So David Christofferson took over there, and thank you very much for that. So thank you very much to them, and also thank you, of course, to everyone who joined from the jam sites and joined from online, and all your participants too. And after the hackathon, I really, again, as I said in the beginning, implore you to continue your research, continue with this. I think a lot of this can really be published and can be put out there. And you're also very welcome to follow our updates, which will be occurring semi-weekly. I think we've missed a little week last week because we were preparing for this Ideathon. But it'll also be released in Spanish soon, so I think that's the first little announcement of that. And it's coming out on YouTube as well. And then the agisf.org/opportunities is a great place to find a lot of different opportunities. For example, I think the Center for the Governance of AI actually have a few job openings as well. So maybe you can use your hackathon or Ideathon project to as in your CV. So that would be wonderful as well. And then you have aisafety.training, which has a calendar of all the events happening around the globe that you can attend and apply for. So that's amazing. And now, I don't know if there's any questions. Really, there probably wouldn't be, but I guess I'll just take the chance to thank everyone for coming and for joining the hackathon. It's been absolutely amazing. So now let's go and see some of the presentations from the projects, and then I will allow anyone who wishes to step up to present their projects. And I see we have the data taxation, Per Ivar Friborg here as well. If you want to take it first, then that might be fitting.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, so this work was done by Joshua Summit, me, Per Ivar Friborg, and William Walle. We're a group at NTNU in Trondheim. Yeah, and this is a presentation we made actually for the rest of our like ML student group, which we were a part of. So I'm just going to skip a bunch of slides here. Like context, you actually don't need. These were just slides to contextualize why we think it's wise to slow down progress towards AGI. It's summarized by this. There are like 3 claims we make. Developing AGI seems plausible given the recent breakthroughs. The race towards AGI seems to have begun. Alignment is really hard, so let's slow down progress towards AGI and make sure that alignment techniques improve faster than the progress towards AGI. That's sort of the motivation behind this. So yeah, these are some pictures from the blackboards. We were lucky to have a lot of blackboards, and we actually had like 3 blackboards in or 2 blackboards in one room, which is great. So we could scribble down all our thoughts. We spent a lot of time like really trying to make something that is robust. So what is this data taxation mechanism? What is the idea? Well, it's tackling this issue of slowing down progress towards AGI, and we wanted to figure out a way to sort of penalize advancements made towards AGI while allowing other more narrow AI development to continue. Because there's a lot of narrow AI development that is very useful to society, and we don't want to hinder that. So the thing we came up with is like, there's like one thing that seems to be quite defining in terms of at least large language models, which is the parameter, number of trainable parameters. So we decided to use this in our formula to make sure that we sort of tackle models that we think are risky in terms of development towards AGI. So this is the actual data taxation mechanism. This is the core of our project. It's a tax formula that calculates how much tax you have to pay for training a model. So it takes in basically the number of parameters, trainable parameters, and also the data usage in training. So the formula beneath the tax formula in the left side, the fee, it's a fun pun, I'd say, because tax and fee and symbol fee, whatever. The formula works like this. You take the max of a function, like arbitrary function 1 of p, which is the number of parameters, trainable parameters in the final model, times arbitrary function f2, and the number or the size of the dataset used to train the model. And then we need to account for the fact that the size of data varies greatly depending on the data type. So we just time it by a constant gamma, which will be assigned a unique data type. And then we have this cap, which serves the purpose of alleviating small projects with the burden of paying tax, projects that just in no way contribute to AGI development. So these functions f1 and f2 might be confusing. We just wrote it for the general case. In the rest of the paper, we suggest that f1 and f2 are basically just like linear functions that return p. So you can basically just think as if f1 and f2 weren't here, that you just take the product p times d. And so when you take the product, you get a case where if both parameters are high and the usage of data is high, then you get a high tax or a high fee. But if only one of them is high, then you're probably not going to reach above the cap, so you don't need to pay. And this is a graph to show how the fee function works. So we have 3 like qualitative different models here. We have let's say a large language model number 2, the red line, which has like a really large number of trainable parameters. This one, and also in the x-axis, there's like the size of the data used to train, and this is for the linear case. So when you use more and more data to train your model, eventually you will reach a point where you have to start pay tax or pay a fee for using data to train your model. And the green case here is a model that doesn't have a large number of trainable parameters. So in practice, it practically never reaches above the cap. So you can use an enormous amount of training data and not need to pay anything. This is how the tax then illustratively is calculated. The tax is basically just the difference between sort of the state of the model before you started training and the state of the model after you started training. So basically looks at the differential between data. So how much data has been used to train. So let's say you train a model iteratively, train it once and then stop the training, save the model, and then you do it again. Then this is the way you will sort of pay the tax. This is the tax is calculated. And the reason why we did this this way is we wanted to avoid loopholes like tax evasions, where people could, let's say, just train a model, then split the data set into pieces. So you train with a very small amount of data first, and then you don't reach the cap, and then you train the model further in another iteration, you don't reach the cap, and you just do that iteratively, you never need to pay the tax. The way this works is every model has to be tagged with the amount of data that has been used to train the model. And if anyone is going to train further on that model, they have to look at where the model, what's the state of the model now, and what's the state of the model after they trained it further, and then pay for the difference. So I'm not going to go into this since we don't have that much time. But this is we basically just outlined why we think the linear function is much better choice. And this is an example calculation where we use the tax formula. Let's say we have ChatGPT, which has roughly 45 terabyte text data and 175 billion parameters. And we decide, okay, for this case, we want the tax for ChatGPT to be 1 billion. So we do this such that we can calibrate the gamma value, the gamma constant for the text data type. And that becomes, you can see it in the lowest area, that becomes a very low number, 1.2698 times 10 to the power of minus 16. And we can now use this gamma constant and see how this works for other cases. So we took another case, which is a cancer detection network, which used 7.2 gigabyte of 2D images and had 800 parameters. In reality, we would have to have a different gamma value here because now we're working with images, not text. But in our case, we can use the text gamma because in either case, images are it's less dense in terms of information per size of data. So it doesn't we would actually have to decrease the gamma if we wanted to account for that. But we're just taking using this example because it works, and the calculated tax if we use this gamma value is 73 cents for training CancerNet. And this is without the cap. With the cap, they would not have to pay anything. So this is just an example to show that you can have this tax formula that disproportionately tackles large models that pose a threat in terms of development towards AGI, and that also use a lot of data, while not penalizing more narrow AI, which we actually want. And I'm not going to talk about this because it's details, which is not that important. I want to mention one thing about social support, which is why we found this regulatory idea appealing, which is that like people are already mad about, or like at least worried about how AGI can take a lot of jobs. And you have also people that are mad about these image nets like Stable Diffusion or Midjourney or DALI 2, for them just using the images that artists have made for free and then making this model and making images in the same style and earning money on it. It seems kind of unfair. Like the way big models can just scrape the internet of data and use it for profit. So I think a lot of people find this unfair, a bit afraid about the future in terms of losing jobs. And if we have a data taxation mechanism, and we also have this redistribution mechanism, then like it's possible to redistribute this fairly. There are many ways you could do this. The one I am most fond of is universal basic income in like the utopian scenario. And yeah, we think that this can appeal to a lot of, like, it can appeal to the public because they already have these type of concerns. Yeah. And there's also the large caveat that this is just, we did this for a weekend. There's probably a lot of things we haven't thought about. But we really spent a lot of time trying to get the formula to be robust, and we think it is fairly robust towards like tax evasion. That's sort of where we think our strength is. And yeah, we think this is a way to like disproportionately target larger models. It's feasible to implement, seems robust, and can gain traction with the public. And of course, the caveat is probably a lot of things we haven't thought about it. So that's the, yeah, that's the project. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. And if there are anyone who has a question, then now's your chance to posit it. Otherwise, I guess one of my questions was that, like, um, uh, have you looked into how does it work with, you know, private versus public data? How would you look into that? Because, you know, the unfairness of artists is that they steal public data to some degree. So how do you think about that?
Yeah, I can answer that. So we thought about this. We're like, oh, what if companies just buy all the data and then they can use it as much as they want? So our proposal is basically meant to tackle all data, whether it's public or private, whether people own it or not. All data, there's like no exception. So basically all like large machine learning companies or research institutes have to report, sort of just make a short document of the model size, the data they are intending to use, such that they can, like the states can take this into account and not take them for tax evasion. It would kind of be like normal taxes. If you don't send in like all the details you're supposed to send in, it would be tax evasions, and it would be punishable by law. So yeah, the way we would avoid this problem of people just buying all data is that this is a regulation that is for all data. And I think that makes sense because I don't think there's like one public organ that has enough data to train an AGI anyways, unless they like buy the entire internet or something. So yeah, that's our thought.
Yeah, so I wonder, is it going to be a pain if you share your screen again? I feel like I'm being a bit slow. So yeah, just forgive me if I'm being a bit thick, but I'm like not sure if the tax increases exponentially or just that there's a cutoff so that people pay very little.
Yeah, this is a very good question. So this is the thing I skipped because of time. Like the discussion about what functions to use. Let's see, where is the, yeah, here. So it's like the discussion of what f F1 or F2 to use. We chose to use linear, like if you have exponential functions. So let's say you do e to the power of the data, size of the data you use, then you can like surgically attack models that have like a specifically large size, and they would just become infeasible. The problem with this is that you need to know a lot about well, the future of AI and AGI and like the size we predict the models to be having. We have a lot of uncertainty about this, so we'd rather just do the linear model, which is more robust in that sense. Also, there's a problem of like maybe I can show here. There's a problem of like if it's not a linear function, people might find ways to split up their data to manipulate the function such that their tax becomes lower. If you look at the formula in the upper right here, when you have it, when you have like linear functions, you have this mathematical case. But if you like, it becomes a bit complicated if you don't have linear functions, and we were afraid that people would find ways to like manipulate their data to like avoid a lot of taxes, basically, like do some loophole stuff.
Nice. Then I think we can also jump on to the next project. Thank you so much, Pierre, for that one. And let's just give him a small hand. Carolina, were you also about to say something? Otherwise, I might pass it on to the next person who wants to present.
Yeah, so basically what I did was this was for like slowing down progress of any kind of like AI development. The basic like idea was, let's develop a body which is hold on, I have the structure somewhere here. So like here's like a national AI regulatory body which is like somewhat envisioned on the lines of like something like the FDA. And you have like these mechanisms where you engage like major stakeholders. So you're like the government, you have AI labs, you have smaller AI labs, and you're like public interest group along with like safety inspectors. So basically like there's like the administrative bit where the government like runs checks, formulates AI policies, so like national AI project and so on, handles like the paperwork and develops like safety standards. There's reporting which happens to this body called RISE, where I'll discuss like the structure later, but the basic idea is that this is like the sort of formal voting and reporting part of the body where like labs would come forward and they would put their models or like their training data to the test, quote unquote, before like deploying them. So they have to like get validation and like a score from the from Naira, which is our body. And the third is like the most sort of interesting bit, which is the monitoring and evaluation. So those kinds of loops are set up by like this council of safety researchers taken from like the top few safety labs and like some international inspectors. So like I propose the International Telecommunications Union can have a seat at CARE. Um, so that's like the sort of three bits of the body. um yeah, and then there's like, okay, what kind of like things can uh Naira delegate on. The idea was, um first of all, like obviously promoting like AI safety and alignment research. So you have like a granting program for this, which the government machinery can take care of. So again, like very very similar to like the FTC and other sort of consumer protection bureaus, making sure that all the consumers are like protected against goods and services, dangerous goods and services. So this can be like integrated into the formal sort of public policy part of it. Advancing like national AI policy strategy. There's also like one more reason why this is a bit of like this body, which I'll like talk about later. A sort of like mini risk office which maintains a log of like any major incidents which happen. um Obviously inspecting, monitoring safety, establishing any kind of standards. I actually did not get much into it because I'm not like a big expert, and I was kind of like tempted to look at Arc and just steal a bunch of their work. So that can be like a potential thing which you put also in the monitoring and evaluation bit. So you're developing essentially a third party auditing mechanism, enforcing like penalties and like scoring different kinds of AI models before they come out, like assessing progress, tracking progress in this field, and like sort of showing people, okay, what kind of um, specific harms can come up and like mitigating them. Okay, now that some of the boring part down, this is basically like the reporting part of Naira. Essentially, you have like leading AI labs, you have quote unquote non-leading AI labs. So maybe like these are something like Google right now finds itself in such a position, or like you have like way smaller AI labs who you also like kind of want to give some amount of representation to. You have public interest group because this is, AI is just going to be transformative in like multiple domains. It interacts with a lot of different fields. We just talked about handling of data, so that like interacts with copyright. It interacts with impacting people's jobs. Obviously, like government inspectors and experts. So like the specific kind of like criteria for, hey, what kind of labs are non-leading, quote unquote, which people are like the experts. This is like further sort of spelled out in the timeline. So they're like given two specific quarters for Naira from the moment of inception to like just develop those standards and develop like, okay, these are the criteria for people to be there in specific roles, and what kind of like public set of criteria we'll have, and then you'll have like some sort of time for like public comment, which is like the norm with US bodies. I just like decided that, okay, since it's a new department, the normal sort of Bureau of Consumer Protection budget plus 10% should be like the starting budget with periodic set of reviews pursuant to like public comment or any kind of internal like memos. Uh, yeah, I think the biggest kind of like question is, a, why would like AI labs listen to it, and like b, what is like the mechanism or like what is the implementation of so this is like the boring bit, like, okay, this is like how you probably formulate such a body, and this is like the fun bit, which is, okay, how does rise and care work in um in collaboration. So the idea is that if any like AI lab has a proposal for like a model, or they have like some sort of training data, they submit that proposal to the entire body. First it goes to care, which makes sure that everything is in line with their safety standards, which then provides like some feedback and some iterations are done, and then once care votes on it, and that vote like goes through, the model is like converted to some sort of like a zero knowledge proof, or it can be like just giving like a very sort of basic architecture without being too revelatory before being passed on to Rise, because Rise has like, so that AI lab, for example, like Microsoft right now, it will have like Google sitting on the other um on that board, and they definitely don't want like their competitors to know about what they're developing. uh the way like competitors could basically kind of quote unquote audit the proposal is, they would raise inquiries, they would point out credible risks, which the proposing lab will have to then show to either care or like to the competitor that, okay, uh, these are like not uh, potential holes in our proposal. um yeah, essentially you can also like think of this as, if you have a large language model, you can think of like Google suggesting a couple of prompts and saying, okay, show us like the results and like kind of prove that it is safe. If it, again, then it passes on to a vote. um if the vote goes through, then the models are deployed. If the vote is failed, then like the government essentially uh like issues like a quote unquote staying order on it, till you are not like getting the model approved by care and Rise, you can't like deploy the model. um so this has like very interesting implications, and like I think I did not touch on like the voting structure. So like the essential voting structure was something like 40% definitely have it somewhere here. Okay. Yeah, here it is. So like, yeah, 40% from like the government experts, 40% to like leading AI labs, split it proportionally. 10% to like any public interest groups, 10% to like non-leading AI labs, and a tiebreaker can be like from the international inspector who's also like from the UN who sits on care. Okay. Um, I think like, so that is like how the entire sort of model would work. Another like kind of reason why this model is particularly interesting is on a game theory level, it's kind of like serving everyone's incentive structures. So the government wants to regulate it. This is like kind of what I outlined in the beginning of the paper. Um, they want to regulate it. They want like maybe more of a role. In some sense, maybe more control. They want to make sure that their systems are like safe, but like at the same time, like they remain like the center of innovation for AI. What do companies want? Like they obviously want to maximize profit. They want to like be basically get the first mover advantage, and want like the products to be generally safe, but not like so safe that it becomes like not profitable. Uh, so this like like serves everyone's incentive structures. I'll come back to like the company's incentive structure in particular, because that's like I think the challenge with the regulatory and standard setting bodies, like getting companies to listen to you, and especially with such a body like with high degree of involvement of companies. You want like the companies to be like willingly signing up. Um, yeah, and essentially like once like all the stakeholders sign up to like this one body, you have like an inefficiency build system. So it serves everyone's needs and wants, and everyone wants to sign up to the council, but just the act of like signing on kind of like promotes some sort of inefficiency. That inefficiency takes the form of like safety standards. So the idea is that you as like, and I outlined this somewhere here, it's like if you are a lab which is let's say something like Google right now, and you're lagging in AI development, you can kind of like quote unquote almost veto or stop your competitors' models from going out into the wild, because not because you have a better model, it's just because you have a seat on this committee and you are able to propose credible risks, or hold your competitors to safety standards which they did not know about. So this hopefully like also incentivizes companies to develop better like safety standards. So right now, like on the offense front in companies, there's only one aspect, right? Which is we want better models, and we want to like have the best models which go out into the market. This is like maybe the second aspect, that okay, we want better safety standards, and like maybe like better safety quote unquote checking mechanisms, because if we have those, we can like stop other companies from even going on the offense. um so like essentially like incentivizing people to poke holes in each other's projects. Yeah, I think that's like most of the working. Also like I uh, put this um sort of small clause at the end, which is that in case there's like a, a lab which sees, oh yeah, there's a potential perceived threat, or there's like a safety loophole, it's like the rise and care community can also be a quote unquote activated to ask for help, to ask for like evaluation or resources and assistance. So that can be like providing some degree of shared accountability. That is part of the reason why like companies would sign up. So like submission of like a risk assessment report, so that the government can like also publish one. It's like in line with the earlier mandate which I was talking about. So I think like, yeah, I think just the last part is remaining, which is okay, why would like the companies even sign up? Part of like what I propose here is, A, it's a good PR move. B, like it obviously allows them to like kind of like veto their competitors. It gives them access to like government resources, especially if like something were to go wrong. um it also allows them to like influence government policy, which is like the whole point of like putting some degree of like national AI policy through this body. So like having like a seat on this council can mean that you interact directly with the government machinery. And um so like a future sort of chips act, and how that specific numbers or the kind of investment which such an act would bring is kind of like landscape changing sometimes for AI companies, and they definitely want uh, to have a say in that. And like the fifth thing is just like having this feedback mechanism between the government machinery and the companies. So like depending on like the level of transparency you are portraying in your proposals, you are given like tax credits. So you're essentially like serves the company's incentive structure, like maximizing their profits, right? So yeah, that's the thing. Most of my, like, all of my project. I'd be happy to take any questions, if anyone has any.
Nice. Does anyone have any questions? Otherwise, I guess, have you thought about how this, just like, what would be the process for implementing it? Like, what would be your stages through Congress, for example, or like, who would you connect for this?
I think it's a good point. I think, like I mentioned this, that since there's like a deadlock in Congress often, you can have like a government, sort of presidential executive order setting up at least part of the machinery, because the I forget, Administrative Procedure Act allows that. That's one thing. Um, yeah. So like another thing is it could be made into like an existing department, such as like, the FCC or the FTC. So those would have to go through sort of congressional uh, committees which sit on, I think it's called like the Senate and Regularization Committee of the U.S. Congress. That is like a probably a good place to go to, if you want to like go into Part B. And like then it would like have to be made like uh, through an act of Congress as like a separate federal department. But this might obviously be like a little too extensive. So like the most sort of feasible route is go from like C to B to A. So like, have like some sort of small pilot. This is like, you only have to convince one branch of government and they're not in like constant deadlock. You then can like, run a small, slightly bigger pilot as part of like a responsible oversight trusted government body, and then like if it like really really works and the government really likes it, you can make it like its own separate department. So I think that's like probably what comes to mind.
Wonderful. Yeah, that seems like a great idea. Any other questions? Otherwise, let's give Hiram a hand as well. Nice. And the next ones to present, I think we have at least two ready to present.
Hello, okay. Wow, so this is my first time sharing on Discord, so let's do this together. 5 folks.
I swear to God, we will have AGI before we will have like working presentations here. So I feel that and Bluetooth are humanity's two greatest shames.
All right, let's make this happen. Technology is forever the best friend. There we go.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Okay, so I apologise for the tech issues, but I'll have you know the rest of the presentation has been flawlessly, both graphic design, a lot of attention has gone into how we've written it, and also how we wanted to present. So we've ironed out the details, apart from the screen sharing. So I think the discussion that we had here is we wanted to get talking about the EU Act. It was sort of an excuse, this hackathon, to dive in and sorry, not the EU Act, the AI, what is it called, AI Act?
EU AI Act.
EU AI Act.
Yeah.
We wanted to dive into it, have a read of it and get an understanding. And I think as we were reading it, we had some concerns, right? So one of the concerns is that the compliance measure is often before market release, but after training. And so for reducing X risk, this poses some problems, right? The model's already been trained, it already exists. It just has to undergo a final check, a conformity assessment to check it can, be released on the market. But if that is some kind of AGI, which is unaligned with humanity, it's already got the abilities to essentially do what it wants. I don't think that release into market is such a significant stage. So yeah, just some information here about the EU AI Act. So yeah, it's very ambitious. It's a lot of work has gone into it. The largest AI regulation proposal worldwide. And it categorizes AI applications into different risk levels. We don't really talk about those risk levels particularly much here, and I think there's some debate about like why what should be considered a high risk AI application and what shouldn't be considered. And one of the hopes with this regulation is that it could spread to other countries via the Brussels effect. I think this is quite an optimistic hope, but there is a little bit of a theory of change there for slowing down AI progress in Western countries. So I think, what do we think is missing? Essentially, we're focusing on specific applications. So it's focused on specific applications.
So there is actually some other tech which is not running.
So yes, as I've kind of already talked about, there's some concerns about how this actually will reduce existential risk if it is kind of a post anti or what is it? Exposed decision. Oh, I knew I'd regret trying to use these terms. Yes, so I'll pass you on to Bart.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll take it over from here. So our inspiration for our policy proposal are environmental impact assessments. And so these assessments have been a successful policy which are used to identify, predict, and evaluate the consequences of environmental or like developments which could harm the environment. And these have been present in the EU since 1985. And these assessments basically consist of 6 steps. So these are screening, in which we look at whether a project will need to have an impact assessment. Then there is scoping, so what falls and what doesn't fall in this project. Then prediction of environmental impacts, what can be done to mitigate it, and then the reporting of the environmental impacts and in the end decision making. And these environmental impact assessments were an inspiration because they are integrated from the start of a development. So before even a project is started, the project people will have to look into what the potential environmental impact could be. So analogous to these environmental impact assessments, we made the AI impact assessments. And these have some of the same steps as the environmental impact assessments. And the idea is that these assessments have to be done before you start training your model. So that's called ex ante. And the idea is that big AI labs will need to think before they start training what could be the potential societal or existential risks for training these models. And also, how are we monitoring whether our training runs are doing something strange? What are the risks, and what are some ways we could mitigate potential side effects that we don't want to have with training our models? And of course, we hope that also that these processes, the impact assessments, could slow down dangerous training runs. And our idea is to use these AI impact assessments and integrate them in the upcoming EU Act. And this could be done by involving them in the already existing conformity assessment. But the difference with the conformity assessment is that the conformity assessment will be done just before deployment or even after deployment. And we want to have our AI impact assessment right after the project proposal, so before you start training your models. Such that, because of course also during a training of a model already, things could be happening which we don't want. I think that's it. Do you have anything to add, Elliot, to our presentation?
I think that's pretty good.
Okay, in that case, we'll be here for questions if there are any.
Nice. I might have one question.
Okay.
One question is, how will, I mean, if I'm a small AI company building a narrow AI apropos Per's presentation as well, then what will, I mean, I can't make a project proposal to the EU and the EU. I can't, I mean, review every single narrow AI use case. How have you thought this into your project proposal?
Yeah, so in the first step, the screening, there will be some certain guidelines for like if you train models that are so big or you use so much data, or we'll have to think of certain cutoffs for when you have to do an impact assessment and when not. And this should be relatively simple to assess.
And it's nice because that maps on perfectly to environmental impact assessments. Not everybody building everything. Not, you know, if you're building a shed in your backyard, you do not need. Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, it seems that you do quite often.
All right, Indra, I think you are the last one to present here.
We had the topic, where will AI fit into the democratic system? And one of our team members made this really nice visual that I will talk you through. Okay, so we have here opportunities of AI within the democratic system. Particularly here on the right, we have made this extensive list. To start on the left, based on experience, we made this view on the democratic system, starting with the voter. The voter votes for representatives that are then selected beforehand and ordered by political parties. And then they will, after election, go into parliament and then coalition forms government. Some details are missing here, but they are in the report. And of course, there is this also very important information environment around it. The media, but also science experts and other researchers that sort of source the facts that we build our information, that we build that ground facts that we can then make good decisions on. That brings me for the first to the first necessary condition that we specified for a well-functioning democracy, which is that you can trust the information that you are using to vote and to decide on as a citizen in your democracy. And then we, with these nice icons here on the bottom left, we created 9 different necessary conditions for a well-functioning democracy. Sometimes there are blurry lines between them. So the next one would be living standards that are reasonable. If not, people will have different priorities than upholding democracy. Something similar would be the case if you have blatant injustices or maybe classes or biases or discrimination. Equality is also much about the equality of people's voice in the democratic system, such that everyone has sort of equal influence, or So if some billionaires or corporations capture the process, that is a problem for democracy. Privacy is also very important. If your personal information, if the privacy of your personal information is no longer there, that information can be used against you, making potential problems with all these other necessary conditions worse. For security, we think about peace and the absence of war and conflict. Then individual citizens also have to have some autonomy for this orienting and deciding. And for example, a lack of far-reaching psychological manipulation. And also, going to the next necessary condition, need to have sort of room, time and space to deliberate, reflect, make up their mind. And then as a final point is to the capability to look ahead and the tendency to do so, such that the democracy as a whole can sort of see threats to it coming in, and then also mitigating those. to enhance the probabilities of persisting into the future. And then finally here as a risk is maintaining meaningful human control, specifically then in the context of AI. If that is lacking, then sort of AI system takes over control and you have an unaligned, unhopeful future where you can no longer exert, the people can no longer exert their democratic powers because they are no longer in control. The other way around, there could also be a problem if democracy is no longer persisting. Then we cannot no longer form the will of the people, and it's also then difficult to align the AI to the will of the people because it's it cannot be formed. So in that sense, it's also very important for alignment that we keep democracy intact. And we also made, I think, a nice summary of multiple, quite general risks related to AI unalignment or misalignment. And then here we also indicated quite a list of different opportunities to integrate AI in the democratic system. And you can see here it's divided into the public sphere, administration, and then the elections in between where the two kind of meet now and then. And for each of them we connected them to a necessary condition for democracy, where they sort of strengthen democracy there, or they or mitigate risks to undermining that necessary condition. And for example, 13 is sort of national system optimization and improvement, which could be to sort of strengthen your economy, to ensure sufficient living standards, and to not have in that way democracy potentially undermined. So each of those we worked out a little bit, looking at what the proposal is, the technical side of it, potential benefits, and also the potential risks. And we chosen two in particular, namely data-driven law and justice reform and encouraging voter participation in the elections. To dive a little bit deeper in those two. And finally, we didn't really go to final answers, but it's sort of meant to start thinking about these topics, sort of stimulating democracy in that way to think more about it and get to better and better solutions and more democratic participation, hopefully, into the future. We had a...
Nice. Awesome. Great project. Anyone have any questions for this one? All right. I think Elliot has one.
I thought it was fantastic. It was
Nice.
really great, really fascinating work.
That was a great compliment instead of a question, but I guess we are not people to shy away from that. All right. Otherwise, are there any comments or any questions now? If not, I think the last thing we'll do is pop this champagne, and then I'll end the stream slowly after that. But thank you very much for participating, everyone, and this was really great and awesome projects. And let's see. Whoa. Perfect. No, that's fine. Yeah, we have the landlord here as well, and there is now champagne on the floor. But this is perfect. Thank you very much for participating, everyone. I'll end the stream, and anyone who wishes to stay around is very welcome to do so. Thank you.